Afternoon. I am talking to Jacqueline Zimmerman. Good afternoon, Jacqueline.
Good afternoon.
By now, hopefully our listeners are familiar with you and your abilities, and this is the third and final installment talking about ACT. In the first one, which was a beginner's lesson in ACT for loan officers, we basically talked about the very basics of entering data into that overall contact page, which is the individual page that holds data, and the fact that you can create 60, 80, how many fields that you want. The 1003 has an incredible amount of fields and information, and plus personal information that you may want to enter on people. And so we talked about that and how you can add notes and generally put any darn thing you want in the deal. In the intermediate class, we got a little more advanced, and we talked about the contact list. And this is, as you correctly said, a mini spreadsheet, a mini Excel spreadsheet that has all these fields laid out. And, of course, the value added in that class was the ability to now take this data that's been entered and manipulate it by using lookup selected and omit selected, and the ability to mail merge and then create newsletters that you could send out every month. And you could send it out to 17 title companies. You could be as exclusive as you want. You could send it out in the stealth mode where you're sending the same thing out to 17 companies, but they do not know that 16 other companies are getting the same thing. So that pretty much covered the second class. In this third and final installment, why don't we just start off for those that are jumping right into this with a little background again. In fact, let me give the background here because we probably only need to cover it in a couple of sentences, and that is Jacqueline is one of the probably top 100 experts, recognized experts in ACT throughout the country, perhaps the world, attends classes to maintain this proficiency and works with many of the top top companies in this country, and also focuses on the mortgage industry, so she has a mortgage background. So, Jacqueline, I thought in this final stage that perhaps you could talk about some of the more advanced features of ACT and what it can do for loan officers in a more sophisticated vein. I'm sure your language that you'll be using is more technical. I would like to point out before we get into this that Jacqueline is a paid consultant, and she's for hire, and is very good at what she does. She can be reached either by email or by phone that's listed in the class, and also through using a software product called PC Anywhere, which enables Jacqueline to actually go into your screens at home or at the office and to manipulate and set things up. So kind of with that, let's have this kind of a wheeling conversation, and perhaps you can talk about some areas you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, for the advanced section, what might be nice to cover are, one, integrating it on the LAN, if that's appropriate. We could spend just a few minutes.
Absolutely.
A few minutes with that. And that's when several loan officers are actually working on one database and working kind of together and in concert and supporting each other's efforts or what have you, or just allowing the actual manager to actually kind of browse and peruse through the database to see what's going on, how things are going.
I don't think I like that one. I think loan officers out there don't want their managers going into their contact database because they may have personal names and personal information besides their business ones. And also, if you have a group of 4, there would have to be a security aspect to it, so one of the 4 couldn't look at the other 3. Is that possible?
That's very possible. Setting it up on the LAN may then just be for backup purposes, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just solo on their workstation, even though they are working on a LAN. And that's also an application that's used all the time. But setting up ACT is available to be set up on the LAN for shared use, and people can actually make their portion of the database private, so that you would have to actually go in as them to see those records, and that can be passworded, etc., just to keep them distinct and partitioned. So that whether that's...
But if someone left the company and decided to change jobs, and this is a very real issue here, would they be able to extract their data?
Yes, they would. Yes, they would be able to do that. This particular scenario may not be as effective, and they really may want to stay solo with their data. So that's always available to them as well. There are certain situations where they do want the data kept on the LAN for backup purposes, etc., but it may not be shared data. It may just be shared between an assistant and a loan officer themselves.
So you're saying one scenario we're talking about is a loan officer that has use of that data and also an assistant and maybe a processor, someone else that also has access to that data to be able to maintain and upgrade it and do applications.
Correct, yeah, to enter the data and to actually also retrieve the output for all the mailings and shippings and faxing and emailing campaigns that go on with that data.
Well, I can see, now this I can see in an office where you have someone who's a heavy producer, who's doing $60 million a year. He doesn't have time, nor does he have any interest in maintaining the database. He certainly enters data when people call him, but if an application is taking, he may set it up. But then he expects the processor to take the data from the loan application and enter it, and actually from that point on, enter data, track it, and do all the work.
Through its various stages, right, to completion. And that usually does fall in the hands of someone else in that scenario.
Now, do they need a LAN version of ACT?
Not at all. There is actually no LAN version of ACT anymore. And the product always remains on the hard drive of the workstation. The only thing that's different is you do have the ability to actually put that data, the database, up on the LAN. One, so it can be maintained and backed up, or so that many people can draw from it. It is only one scenario. There are also, depending on the situation and what the desired outcome is for that data, people could be mapped from one workstation to the next, so that the assistant effectively is mapped over to the loan officer and is working with that data set while he's away, while she's away.
Now, also, can I ask you a question here? There are going to be some companies out there that are very tech-oriented, and they really use technology to its fullest. I have one company in mind. I guess I probably shouldn't say the name, but would you be able for an office to set up a deal where all the data that exists in a particular software package, whether it's Contour or Calyx or one of the others, that it could roll over into ACT automatically, all those fields?
Oh, data exchange between other products?
Yes.
And ACT. There are many different add-on products. Since ACT has 80% of the contact management market worldwide, it is a leader and does attract many add-on vendors who have created subsequent products that will interact with the ACT software. ACT is proprietary in code. It's a code-based program, and until probably ACT 2001, it will remain that way. At any rate, with the product ACT 2000 as it is right now, there are a whole host of products, add-on products, and there's actually a website, addons.com, actaddons.com, where you can actually go to and start looking for different products dependent on whether you're trying to integrate data with Mass90, etc.
So what you're basically saying is that, and for those loan officers out there, they may have to talk to their companies here to see what kind of upfront POS system software they have, but that a lot of the software programs where they're taking a 1003 and a lot of this data is entered already could be exported into their ACT program. I think that's the...
Yes, because ACT is, and the technical people will know, it's only partially ODBC compliant in that it's great with importing in, it's great with ACT exporting out, but not always so great with importing in. That's when the add-on products really become necessary, because there is that issue of redundancy of data. So that might be an issue where that's where we speak specifically to the technically the IT directors, the MIS people. And
you're capable of that?
I can actually find people around the country and the world who actually know certain products, because there are many where people are asking to integrate with such and such a program. And so, no, I wouldn't be expert in that. I would be the liaison who actually gets people together.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the name of the game is to be able to get it done, and be able to go to the right.
Yeah, find who's good around the world to get you some help.
Mm-hmm. I guess the practical application here, Jacqueline, that I'm talking about is maybe a small company of 3 offices that's using a particular POS, or by that we mean point of sale software from a company, and they want to take all that data that the processors have entered in, and the underwriters and closers, everybody has entered into that software, and be able to export it to that loan officer's ACT program, so that he then can send out the newsletters and solicit refis and everything, without having to take that file, that closed file, and turning to his contact manager person, assistant, saying, here, good luck, God bless, take all this stuff and enter it into my database.
There are some complexities involved in that process.
Mm-hmm.
One of them would be, what are your expectations for the outcome? And if you're simply just wanting to grab data and create a unique database in ACT, the answer is yes, and it's fast. If you actually want to integrate that data into your existing ACT, you may have a situation of redundancy of data. And so that is a yes, but there's some, you kind of want to be aware of what the full-scale game plan is for that data set. And is it being downloaded into, which we should get into, Palm Pilot? And is it being synchronized with other database workstations? So given kind of a list, just to show you that you do run into some complexities, you definitely want to have an ACT-certified consultant work with you, or work with your IS directors on that project in its inception. But it can be available to you, it can be ironed out. Not always so easy with ACT. It's amazing. ACT is the best-selling contact management software in the world, and yet it does still have that as a slight complexity that does need some ironing out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think what you're saying, sometimes it's better to do it on an individual basis from the get-go. Am I reading that correctly? Or
you're going to be in ACT. I think if you're saying if you're dedicated to ACT, then it's great to have your whole world in ACT.
Okay, without trying to use interfaces to integrate data from other programs.
Actually, I'm not saying that. If the interfaces are available, or even if they can be cheaply constructed for you, then the answer is all the better. So
a company should look at it to see if they're able to do it, though.
Right.
Okay, all right.
On a specific basis, kind of, just investigate how convenient that is, and in many cases it is.
Okay. What about some of the more advanced uses of ACT for our listeners out there, for loan officers?
Many of the loan officers out there that I've gotten in contact with really like the fact that they want to take their data home. And this is a situation where synchronization comes into play. Just one of the scenarios where you actually do want to synchronize your data. That way you can leave for a week, or work at home for a week, or just be gone, or maybe you're so compulsive you take the laptop on your vacation. But and still the data can be maintained and entered and expanded upon in the office by your assistants and whomever. So that situation then, where you want to take the full data and work on it independently of what's being worked on at the office, that's a perfect scenario for synchronization to take place. And that's something that you get a consultant to set up once, and then you have instructions, and pretty easy instructions where you just do the rest.
Well, let's do a specific example. I'm working at Hanson Financial. I'm a loan officer. I'm doing about $50 million a year. I'm pretty darn busy, but I also do a lot of work at home on my PC, and I want to have everything integrated so that whatever I have in ACT at work, also when I go home at 6 o'clock at night, if I need to pull up something, I want to have the exact same data there. How is that done specifically?
Specifically, synchronization, and you probably want to go straight with email, being the most simplest form. I actually have ironically heard that some people had a preconceived notion that the email synchronization is not easy because of the downloading, and many people are still constrained to 56K modems. But the answer is absolutely not. The first setup of it is the most time-consuming, and after that, it's just subsequent changes. Whatever changes were made at the office get shipped straight to home, and vice versa.
When you say they're shipped to home, what do you mean when you say they're shipped to home? You used by email?
Via email is one method, and it's the method I would recommend.
Okay, so I have 729 files, and I go in on Thursday, and data is changed in 42 of them. Some of them a little bit. I've added 2 new customers. Some of them, quite a bit of the data has changed. And now I want to go home.
Notes, right. And now you're going home for the day. And it's just like clockwork. You don't really even think about it.
How do I do it?
You've got your data. You probably save it. You're going to hit a button to sync, and it's going to shoot out with your email. And it's going to go straight to home. Now, it is based on the fact that you will have a different email at work to receive from the one that you receive it at home. So 2 different email.
Because there's 2 ISPs involved? Is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
Because there's probably 2 ISPs involved?
It doesn't have to be 2. You could go Earthlink at work, Earthlink at home. Could be the same. But the actual name, I have Jack Zim, and I also have JAX. So if I'm in 2 different locations, I'm receiving in my office as JAX. And at home, I have the account Zim.
Okay.
So just so that when I'm sending it, it really, truly, that sync packet is made for the one at home, and it should be received there. It's just a logistical point.
And what about reversing it? I finish up my work at 10 at night. I've entered stuff in 11 new fields, and now I want to update my stuff at the office when I go in tomorrow.
The process is exactly the same. You finish for the day at home, you hit the button, it shoots out like an email would, and it's there for you at the office when you arrive.
That's fabulous.
You upload it at your leisure.
Hey, you know what's kind of cool about it while I'm thinking about it, and that is if I'm a loan officer out there and I'm doing, let's say, 35, 40 million, I'm pretty darn busy, and I have someone that's capable of maintaining my database, what's kind of neat about it, I can be out there calling on customers during the day. She could be updating the database and whatever, and then she could be doing the sync before she leaves at 5 so that when I get home, it's there.
It is also a scenario where people do have people who are working at home entering a lot of data from their own houses. And the reverse is true. Suddenly they're the remote and they're sending into the office all the data they've input for the day on new leads, any documentation that they've sent out or data that they filled into the database. So sometimes they're the person who is at home. And both scenarios also work. People off-site, several people off-site can be emailing sync packets into a master database held in the office. So you do have some flexibility. Many scenarios work in that instance.
That's great. The thing I like about it is the fact not only that using synchronization that you can have it in 2 or 3 different areas. The fact is, I don't, as a loan officer, I don't have to be the one that's doing all this.
No, you don't. That's the beauty of it. It's very effective for people who really want to delegate some of the responsibility or workload onto others. They're freed up to do what they do best.
Now, this is something, too, as a consultant, using PC Anywhere that you can set up for people, too.
Yes.
If I were to have PC Anywhere at my office and then I have PC Anywhere at my home for maybe a total cost of $120, you can come in and, whether I'm at home or at the office, we can work and set all this stuff up.
Right. I can actually PC Anywhere to both sites and work on both of them almost at the same time.
Really?
Get the full sync cycle going. It's that initial burn that's the most complex, and then pretty much the user takes over all responsibility. From time to time, they shoot me email if something comes up, but pretty much it's maintenance-free.
Hey, let's talk about something else that we haven't talked at all, and let's talk about groups. What are groups? How are groups set up? What are the advantages and disadvantages of having a group? And just to have some reference points in the conversation, let's say that specifically I'm going to have groups that are realtors, CPAs, financial planners, and fraternity brothers.
Okay. That's an interesting group, set of groups. Yeah, for the fraternity brothers, with regard to ACT, what is extraordinary is that you do want to have, again, you do want to kind of migrate towards the school of thought of, this is my whole life, and really take advantage of the fact that you can enter in, whether it's, all of your clients, all of your prospects, all of your referral individuals, and also your personal life, your friends and family, and things that you do, even the doctor and dentist, so to speak. So if that's appropriate for you, all of that does fit within ACT. And much like John just mentioned, the fraternity brothers being also a group that you would create. Groups are fantastic in ACT. By comparison, with creating new fields, and we spoke of that even in the beginning session and in the intermediate, that ACT is very plastic in that you can create your own fields for your own specific data capture, interest rate, loan amount, closing date, and so forth. All those fields could be represented, customized into ACT. With reference to groups, groups are very exciting because unlike fields where if you have 10,000 people in your database, if you create a field, 10,000 people will also get that field. So the data does become quite large. Groups are extraordinary in that you can create them and delete them with virtually no complications and not with really increasing the size of the data. So that's just from kind of a structural view of what groups do from that standpoint. Now specifically, when you speak of groups, and I hope I'm not getting off track with you, John.
No, not at all. We are very much on track.
You really want to pay attention to the fact that groups are easy to create and also remove when not needed. Many times people are creating groups that are transient. They're only needed for a specified period of time. And in that case, by deleting the group, there is no liability to the contact record. It is not injured in any way. So that's exciting. But also the groups can have different reasons for why they are made. One is that golfing buddies, which is an ACT demo, or fraternity brothers.
Well, let's talk about golfing buddies. There's a lot of interviews I do where they talk about how much they'd like to play golf, and let's say they have a group of 10 different realtors out of their 100 realtors they deal with that are kind of golfing buddies, and they like to play golf. How could that be used?
ACT has actually the power to cope with that in two ways. One, actually, there could be a field called personal interest, where that type of information is trapped at the contact field level. It also could be redundantly exist as people that really I do golf with, these sexually groups that I am interactive with. I do want them collected in that way so I can get them on my schedule, know who has a high interest in playing, etc. And in that way, so groups would be created. It would be up to the person to maintain the group, so when someone is no longer a golfing buddy, they would be removed, etc. And also when someone new comes into the database, to make sure that they are added. But what's great about it is ACT does have on its main view, and you're going to notice this on your ACT screen, it shows in triangular brackets, it says no groups along the bottom, pretty much closer to the right, and it's above the clock, the computer clock that exists. And that says no groups. The natural way for ACT to actually exist is that in a full lookup, and it is invariant to groups. There is no attachment to any specific group in a full lookup. Also, other lookups, when you look up everyone in the state of California or New York, those also have no affiliation to a group. When you grab the group, ACT will remember who are members in that group, who are tied to that group, and bring up that collection at a moment's notice, and that's been handy. Groups do take on a variety of different lives. Like, you can create as many groups as you like, actually, and many of my clients do exceed 500 to 1,000 different groups. It's all based on your comfort level and also your organizational skills of what type of protocol you have in actually creating those group names so that they're user-friendly for you later. So some of this does take a little bit of thought, and you can actually be advised by an expert like myself or whomever and kind of get a grip on what you want to be doing with groups. But it does serve a purpose in that it can bring people together like realtors. Now, we spoke in the intermediate that you do have, and at length, that you do have ID status. You could grab ID status realtors and get the collection that way. But once in a while, we develop a group where it's our premium realtors, maybe our A-plus realtors.
Okay. Now that, I want to stop you right there. You just hit a real chord with our listeners out there, because most of the good loan officers out there that are using a database, they absolutely have gradations for their clients. They have their A clients, those people that they have sent them maybe three or four referrals every year. They really want to massage those people. Absolutely keep in touch with them. They've done refis with them. They've sent them business. Then you have a B group that sends them, maybe one referral a year, worth keeping in touch with. You don't want to purge them. And then you have your C's that, they don't send you a whole bunch, just enough to kind of keep on there, but you want to stratify them. And now, obviously, you want to give your A much higher level of service. Maybe you want to offer them a rafting trip every year. So, let's talk about that. I like that right away.
Yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength here, because many of the clients in different fields, not just even mortgage loans, but very, very much a prevalent issue to mortgage lenders, is you do want to be able to stratify. And ID status may not be a field that you really want to cut down and differentiate too much, because you ultimately do want to keep the ability to grab all realtors for a given mailer or for a given reason. So without really tampering too much with the ID status field and making it too specialized, groups are really an elegant way to kind of lasso for specified reasons. And even in the group's descriptions, you can actually write to yourself why did you specify this particular group as meaningful, and just have meaningful groups that you treat and handle differently. And so that's an excellent use of it. Another one actually is for groups is that some companies actually do keep data for the different groups. They will actually, the group record actually does house some data fields, and not so much. We might not go there in this particular section, but it's available to you. You're going to notice that when you go into groups. You're going to say, wow, it has all these fields. It has notes and histories. It has activities. And the notes and histories also can become a composite. Anyone who is affiliated with that group, you can actually suppress or view all the notes and histories for them. And sometimes when you're working on a project, even if you're just closing a super huge deal, you may have people who have seemingly nothing to do with each other, but they do. They come into play for a certain deal that you're closing. And so you've got a lawyer involved and closing agent and so forth. Now these fields also could be made to live in the ACT database as far as listing agent, buying agent, loan amount, financial planner. All that data really could be classified or kept on that. But if these people actually exist and they come together for a particular project, that's a great use of groups, to group these people who normally have no relationship to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So also mailing lists, Christmas lists, who do I want to send my beautiful Christmas cards to? And for 1999, for 2000, for 2001.
Right. Maybe just to, I was going to say make up something absurd, but actually it's not absurd at all, as I think this through. Maybe you have a group of clients that you have divided into your ABC categories, and maybe in that A group, there's 15% of those that are really special, and you not only want to send them a holiday card, you want to send them a very expensive calendar that maybe costs $30 a piece, but only your very good top 15% in that A group are going to get it. And so what you're saying is that in a group function, you could set up so that only that 15% are going to get that expensive calendar.
Exactly, and it's based on comfort. If you're fine with making 500 different groups, if they serve some purpose, the product was made to do exactly that. There's no reason not to. So if you want to even sub-stratify those stratifications down further, drill them down to the elite premium group and so forth, perfectly excellent use of ACT. It's really how the product was made.
Mm-hmm.
Those groups are to serve you and support you so that you have good tracking. And so later you can look up and see, hey, who got all this? Who did I send this to? Notes and histories are a wonderful way to see who got what. But as far as grabbing the whole group coherently, who really got this beautiful calendar I've sent out?
Hey, I got another kind of neat twist on that. You send this calendar out to that top 15%, and then over the next 6 months, you want to track and see what kind of results you're getting, so that every time you get a client referral in, you're not only setting them up in your database, but you're also making a notation in a field that you've set up in that group or you're setting up an independent field that when you get a deal, that goes in there that maybe it's a numeric field that they sent you 1, 2, 3, 10 deals, and so now that can be integrated too, and you now can track for those people that you sent this wonderful calendar how many deals they gave you in the last 6 months.
Yeah. Further hindsight to seeing how the data's going.
You know what this kind of reminds me of? It's a company that's actually having a lot of trouble, but it also has a very high name recognition here, and that's MicroStrategy, where Saylor, obviously, the stock went from nothing up to 333 and just promptly bounced back down in the 20s. They're having some problems. They just hired a new financial man, and it looks like they're back on track. But their whole raison d'etre is data mining, and it sounds to me, and what they do is they take data from huge databases and deliver it to you by wireless over your telephone. Their whole idea is not only delivering you, let's say, financial information that you request, but also delivering you information that you want when it comes in, and it can notify you, and that's their value added. I see a version here of this.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, where you're able to take this data and really manipulate it any way you want to help make money for you?
That's what's fun about working with the clients on the onset when they get the product. And actually that time spent there is so valuable because in the end we can actually create the data capture to reflect the important fields that later will be used for data mining.
And you know what? That you made a point. I actually, even at the point of interrupting you, which I apologize to it all the time, there is a certain fundamental thing here that I think people have to recognize. Those people that want to do these advanced features that we're talking about in this class, they have to start off by using someone like yourself right up front to capture the kind of data up front and set it up correctly. Otherwise, you can't do it.
You can, but actually it's not cost effective. It's not as cost effective, really, because people do all the time. They will run with it for a year, and they'll finally see the value of really sitting down and having a coherent picture drawn up for where they're going with their product and their data capture and so forth. And that's when we come in. And it's not too late then. But to tell you the truth, John, it really makes sense to get someone right away. It's a stitch in time. Kind of a phrase, and it sounds hokey, but it's not. It really is prudent to get the developmental issues kind of teased out right from the get-go, so that you can roll out a game plan that you can also really buy into.
But loan officers are almost kind of a unique breed in the sense they absolutely can relate to this 100%, because loan officers know that whether you're dealing with realtors or builders or setting up a database, whatever it is, it's important that you set everything up correctly. It is, in a very basic sense, it is no different than a loan officer analyzing the real estate community, targeting the offices that they want to go after, and then keeping records and all the other things that are necessary. There's no difference at a very basic level from the advanced things that you're talking about.
There really isn't. It's the same methodical planning, and it really does pay off. It's really quite a windfall. And that's where the value comes in, because it makes it fun. There's also a very large attachment. ACT is terrific, straight out of the box. There's also a very, very wonderful attachment to a product that really is just made for you and really serves the purposes and functions that you're really focusing in on.
Yeah. What's kind of neat to kind of conclude this is that we are really, and I think this is the exciting part that loan officers certainly can relate to, the things that we are talking about here are things that produce large amounts of money. The things you were talking about in creating groups and sophisticated mailings and things like that, a loan officer can bang in anywhere between $500 and $1,500 a deal. Well, I mean, damn, you get 10 extra deals a year, you've paid for your program, 20 times over. And it's just money that is, smartly spent.
It's really extraordinary because people are very excited, and people don't ever want to give their act back once they have it. So it's fulfilling from that aspect, because the things that we create and work with them on really do produce into dollars, but also a lot of fulfillment, a lot of excitement over their process.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the. You alluded to it in the previous class. You talked about a little bit of the fun aspect of it and the quality of life that you mentioned in the first beginner's tape. Yeah, we haven't talked about that, and I think maybe we'll end up with that, because not only can this bring money to the table, it also brings efficiencies in terms of time. And when you save time and make money at the same time, you're creating not only a much more fun environment, you're creating a quality of life issue. I talked to a fellow, I think it was either Steve Peterson or from Partners Mortgage out in California, or Dave Casano from Chase. They really got into how they have, and they all do 70 or 80 million a year, which is pretty significant. And they talked about how they have made the quality of their lives better. And they were wonderful interviews, because they used getting that extra volume and the money to create a better quality life for themselves. I think one of them only works 35 hours a week, and he flies all over to play golf. And he enjoys his life. Well, there's two ways to look at that. One, you can, bust your hump and kill yourself and get that money and feel lucky to be alive at the end of the week. Or you can do it the way they do it, by the very tech-centered and use technology, both of them. And that is to use technology to make your life easier. And I think a lot of the things that we've talked about in these three classes really kind of merge together to create value added, not only for the customer, but also in terms of quality of life. So I want to thank you, Jacqueline, for taking the time to talk to us in this third and final installment. Jacqueline can be reached if you look at your class schedule there. She has a phone number and an email, and she can be contacted. And once again, Jacqueline is one of the top 100 experts in this country, perhaps the world, in ACT. And Jacqueline, I want to thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you, John.
Okay.